Hello, and welcome back to the weekly wrap-up of the Neo Crown series. My name is Jairam, and I'll be your host for this series. Um, and we just finished up week 4 of the Neo Crown series. Unfortunately, we do have to start this out with some rather sad news. Matt, who had such a strong opening to this season, is going to have to drop out, which is rather unfortunate. On the bright side though, at least he didn't leave while currently in the possession of the top seed in Division 1, because we now have a new leader in the clubhouse, because the Your Bestie surge is real. If you'll remember last week, I mentioned how Your Bestie was going to have a difficult challenge in front of them by facing both Mabel and Matt. And they conquered it. They 2-0'd Mabel, 2-0'd Matt. Super strong surge from them. And they're now in the possession of the #1 overall seed because of it. Genuinely super impressive week. Of course, Mabel, even with that loss, still able to stay at the top, tied for with a tied record with Your Bestie, with a 2-0 over score. Those two sitting at 6-2, decently ahead of the rest of the pack right now. Then below that, you have Termax, who had a strong opening at 3-1 and has kind of just been riding the waves since then, 1-1 both last week and this week, to stay at 5-3 overall. That's enough to stay third place, a game behind the leaders. This week they were able to do that with a 2-0 over Matt and a 1-2 to Marburst. Web Bowser is in a similar position, although their strong 2-0 week happened week 3. Other than that, they've been 500. But this week they were able to 2-1 Dino. Or no, sorry. 2-0 Pixelakio and 0-2 Dino. So, solid, just treading water to stay at the top of the leaderboards. Of course, Matt has fallen down here. Rough week for them. But then, number 4, we'll see a returning face. Cavalo started the season at 3-1, then had an 0-2 last week, but then this week had another 2-0 performance, with a 2-1 Dino and 2-0 Igor. So, very opposite path from Termax and Web Bowser, who have just stayed steady with one good week. Cavalo has had a few very good weeks and a few very bad weeks. But as long as you have more good weeks than bad and are able to stay decently above 500, that'll work out in your favor. Yeah, especially that 2-1 over Dino is a really nice win, because if that had gone the other way, it would be Dino who would have surged into the top 4 with Cavalo down in the slew of 500 players. Then at 7 we have a bit of an odd occurrence, Airy at 4-3. Just because the Airy versus Skarmy set, to my knowledge, has not been played yet. We just don't have the result of it. And the TOs don't know either, so I assume that'll be worked out by the TOs and we'll have an answer probably by next week. But for now, Airy's just 4-3, and Skarm is 2-5. They've only played one game this week. But Airy does have an impressive 2-0 over Ket here, which Ket was in the top 4 heading into this week. But Airy with a nice 2-0 is gonna knock Ket down a bit and set themselves up in a good position to join that other set of 5-3 players and be in a really good spot to be in the top 4 here. Ket definitely having a bit of a rough week, not only with that 0-2 to Airy, but also an 0-2 to King of Charge, to fall back down to 4-2, or 4-4 after being up at 4-2 last week. So Ket kind of taking that Cavalo approach, having big swings, having very good weeks and very bad weeks. I have to wonder if some of those less consistent players are the players who are taking different teams into the league each week, and that's kind of why they're varying in success, because their teams are varying in quality or matchup. That could be very interesting to look at, just to see the difference between those two, not really play styles, but like approaches to the league, whether sticking with one team or changing them up often works out better. Next in the 4-4 mess in the middle of the standings here, we have Dino, who talk about consistent, another 1-1 week. I believe both Dino and Marburst have been 1-1 every single week of the season so far. This week, Dino 1-2 to Cavalo, 2-0 Web Bowser. So, 2-0 on Web Bowser is really good, since Web Bowser at the top of the standings. 1-2 Cavalo, less good, but also still a fair loss, since Cavalo's at the top of the standings. But if you're going to want to make the playoffs, you're going to have to beat those players at the top of the standings so you can take their spot. So, 500's not going to quite cut it at the end of the season. But an interesting thing to note with Dino here is that they have already played every single player ahead of them in the standings. And the only player in the 500 tie with them is Ket, that they haven't played. So definitely, at least according to the standings, Dino definitely has a bit of an easier schedule ahead of them. However, that's definitely not to say that anyone at the bottom of the standings is a pushover. They all have a few wins under their belt, and they've all beaten some very solid players, so definitely would not write off the rest of Dino's schedule as easy or anything like that. Or as free, I mean. Yeah, Marburst also kind of in that 500 hell that Dino is, going 1-1 every week. This week, 1-2 versus Igor, 2-1 over Termax. I feel like Marburst, probably one of the least talked about players that has been at least 500 or above every week with this recap, just because they haven't really had a lot of signature wins or big wins to really talk about. But that Termax one might be enough to get them going, because Termax has been consistently in the top 4 throughout the whole season so far. So a win there is very impressive. Could set up, could mean that Marburst has got something good going there, maybe potential sweep in their future. And lastly, for the 4-4 players that I haven't talked about yet, is Score. Score is another one of those up and down player, or has had an up and down start to the season. 3-1, only to lose 2 last week. Kind of stabilizing this week. 1-1, 2-0 Pummy, 0-2 Mabel. Losing to someone at the top of the standings, beating someone at the bottom of the standings. Doing what's expected. We'll see if they can get another surge like Cavalo had and get back up to the top of the standings. But moving on to week 5. An important thing to note with the mat dropout is that there's now only 7 matches played each round instead of 8, or sets I should say, and 2 players are only going to play 1 set each week. This week I believe it's Mabel and Score who are only going to be playing 1 set. And I believe they just get counted as an automatic win. I could be wrong on that though. And unfortunately with that dropout, that does mean we have less exciting matches to look at too. So only 2 that I've really got my eye on in round 9 here. Marburst versus Your Bestie. Your Bestie has surged their way to the top of the leaderboards. Marburst has stayed consistent. This could be another huge statement win for Marburst if they can get the upset here. Or if they lose, maybe they will just be doomed to going 500 every week. And then next in round 9 is kind of the setup. We have a lot of top players playing each other. That's going to start with Cavalo Termax, our current ranks 3 and 4. That's going to be a huge game to maintain pole position, or playoff position. And not only do they play each other, but they each play another top 5 opponent in round 10, with Cavalo moving on to face Your Bestie, and Termax moving on to face Web Bowser. So Termax is really interesting here. If they go 2-0 this week, they're currently tied with Cavalo Web Bowser. They go 2-0. That's going to force Cavalo and Web Bowser to each drop a game, and Termax is going to get a game lead on each of them. If that happens, we could see these top 3 kind of separate themselves from the pack. Of course, there's also the other outcome. Well, there's a lot of outcomes here, but on the other end of the spectrum, we could have Cavalo upset Your Bestie, and then kind of have all of these players beat each other, and we could see them all come back to the pack and let some of these other players get back, or get a little closer to those top spots. Lots of interesting outcomes for those set of matches. And then week 10, we also have the 4 and 4 players all playing each other. We have Dino versus Ket, which is a rematch of the first ever Conquest Clash. 2 very historic players. That is going to be a very important matchup. Just both of these 4 and 4 matchups, you really want to win this. If you lose this, you're going to be falling behind those other 4 and 4 players, as well as probably potentially falling behind all of the 5 and 3, 6 and 2 players as well, and potentially falling out of that playoff race. Yeah, Score versus Marburst, same thing. Super, super important set for those 4 sets for those 4 players to kind of stay in this race. I feel like if you lose that set, that could be a little bit of a death sentence for the playoffs here. Maybe not. Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but there's only 8 games left. Every game counts. Yeah, and that just about wraps it up for the weekly wrap-up for week 4 of the Neo Crown series. I'm not sure I have any big predictions for this week. I'm mainly just excited for some good Beastieball matches with Termax, Cavalo, your bestie, and Webbowser. It should be a very exciting week, very telling week for how well those players have performed. Yeah, we could be seeing some sets that are rematches in playoffs. Hopefully you understood what I meant. Yeah. That's it for... Oh, one last thing. Other two divisions are approaching playoffs. Div 3, this is the last week of regulation, and then, it's Div 3 playoffs, which I'm very excited to play in, and Division 2 is not too far behind that, I think just a week behind. So, yeah, make sure to tune in for Divisions 2 and 3 end of season. Unfortunately, I've not been able to cover those just because I do not have the time or energy, so... but who knows, maybe I'll make a recap of their season at the end. Maybe. But with that said, have a good week 5 of the Neo Crown series, and I'll see you all next time.